Okay, yeah. So I introduced myself earlier. I'm Alex Brace from Argonne and UChicago. Work with Ian Foster and Arvind Ramanathan as a PhD student. Um, so, so Alex introduced other Alex introduced tokenization at a bit higher um, level and covered many tokenizers and gave some background. And now what we're going to do is take a deep dive into the byte pair encoding method, and this is going to be quite technical. So bear with me. So we're going to basically read through this algorithm line by line through the code, and also start by walking through an example. Perhaps it was mentioned, but BPE was originally developed just to compress text together. So these transformers are actually trained in a sense on compressed uh, English text or just natural language text. So that's what this algorithm is attempting to do is take a long corpus of data or a long sequence and compress it down into a fewer number of tokens. And this, as Alex mentioned, it makes it more efficient for training transformers because of course the quadratic complexity of attention means the longer the sequence length, the more operations needed to say compute the next token or to train. So um, so you can follow along. This notebook runs very quick. It's actually directly borrowed from the Hugging Face documentation. So they have all their stuff under an open license. And so I just added some comment annotations and a few things on genomics at the bottom. But otherwise, it's just the Hugging Face tutorial. So there's a bunch of good references online, a bunch of good tutorial videos as well. In addition, there's one by Andre Karpathy that kind of does a real deep dive into this, which is perhaps a good reference if you need more information. So let's dive in and kind of consider this example problem. So Alex mentioned the normalization and pre-tokenization steps. So we're going to assume that the data has been normalized and it's also been pre-tokenized. So we're basically considering sets of words. And what we do is say, if we have some set of words here, then BPE, and we're going to see. So if you don't follow everything I said, it gets quite down the weeds. We're going to go through a lot of examples, so hopefully it becomes clear. But you take that set of words, and what you do is define a base vocabulary, which is essentially all of the characters of these words. So you can see all the B, G, H, N. These are all represented, and for real world cases, you would include, say, the ASCII characters and Unicode characters and such. But for these examples, we're just going to keep it very simple and specific to the particular data we're dealing with. So after you get this sort of base vocabulary, what BPE tries to do is just it constructs a vocabulary. So it says, okay, what's a new token I can add? And I keep adding new tokens until I reach some desired vocabulary size. And I decide on which tokens by merging. So I see basically what's the most common frequency of two bytes so they call them bytes. So bytes are characters. I'll probably use those interchangeably, but maybe yeah, try sticking with one. So it considers all the character pairs and it says which is the most likely or which is the most frequent character pair, and it basically adds that as a new token to the vocabulary, and it'll keep doing that iteratively until you tell it to stop. And that's what we mean by a pair as well. So the pair is gonna be a terminology we use a lot here. So if we go back to this example, we had our initial set of vocab words, and usually if you have a large text corpus, then you'll have multiple instances of these words. So the first iteration or first step is essentially computing the word frequencies over the data. So maybe you have some text and hug appears 10 times, bug appears 5 times, and so forth. So imagine counting those up. And so we start the training, the training of this tokenizer by splitting each word into its characters. And those are the ones that form the initial vocabulary that we saw. So you can see that, hug, for instance, you have H U and G, and those each occur 10 times, and likewise for the other ones. And then we start looking at the pairs. So the pair would be H and U is a pair, and U and G is a pair. And so these words HUG and HUGS, these occur 15 times across this corpus. And the most frequent pair, however, is U and G. So U and G together occur more often because U and G, that pair also occurs in PUG. So otherwise it might be H and U. And so you can imagine kind of looping over these. So we see in this case U and G occurs 10 times here, 5 times here, and 5 times here. So it has 20 total occurrences. And so that's our first merge rule. We say, U and G becomes this single token UG, and that token is now added to the vocabulary. And then what we do is we do this merge operation where we say, okay, we've computed the most likely pair, and now we've added to the vocabulary, but now we have to concatenate the instances of that original pair within our corpus. So we see that the UG in HUG becomes just H and UG, and each of those character, or this is where it makes maybe more sense to call them bytes, or just because this is now a string with multiple characters in it. But each of these bytes occurs 10 times, and you can see the UG is also reduced here and in PUG. And so we'll go through a couple iterations of that. So this is basically the same thing we just looked at. So we'll get some more familiarity. So now we look at we count up all the pairs again, and we see that H and UG is present 15 times. But the most frequent pair is evidently UN. So we see, let's see, the UN, so we have 12 occurrences here, 4 occurrences here. So that's 16, I think, or maybe something like 16 total times. And so you can see we append that vocabulary element UN, and we do the concatenation again. And so you can see each iteration, the text gets a bit more compressed as far as the number of tokens or number of vocabulary elements that it takes to represent the corpus. And the third merge rule, we see it happens to be this H and UG, so we get HUG as a vocabulary element. So that's the algorithms kind of step by step. I'll leave this exercise as something you can do after the fact, because it should be very, very straightforward to do, but I just don't want to spoil the answer. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Because now we're going to look at code, and we're going to see how to, of course, automate all that.
Yeah, good so far.
Great. Let's see. So, not sure. Oh yeah. So this is the training. We just walked over as the training for this tokenizer. Now the actual tokenization algorithm is when I have the trained tokenizer, I have all the vocab and the merges, and now I have some new input text, and I just like to tokenize that text. So the way that works is sort of iteratively, over the merge rules. So I take my text and I apply the first merge rule that I learned, and then I apply the next merge rule on top of that sequence, and I keep applying the merge rules until the final one has been finished, and that's now my compressed text into this set of vocabulary elements. And you can imagine that these correspond to the input IDs when you're training a transformer. So it was mentioned that these correspond to integers, and so you can just imagine assigning one integer per each element in the vocab. So that's how tokenization works. Is there questions on tokenization? I think that part should be pretty
That's good,
straight.
yeah.
Good. So okay, so now we go to implementing the byte pair encoding algorithm. So we just are going to use this example text that they provided, and this is purely educational. So none of this is like high performance implementation here. I think the underlying tokenizers are implemented in Rust, so they're a bit faster. The only reason we're getting it here is because we'd like to use that pre-tokenizer just to split the text into words. But otherwise, we're not using the default tokenizer for anything. So the first step here is really computing the frequency of each word in the corpus. So first we're looping over the text. These are essentially a bunch of strings, and we split the text into words, and then we get a list of all the words in that particular input text, and we just get a dictionary. So this is a default dictionary. If you're unfamiliar, just basically every time you add a new element, it assumes if it's not in there, it uses the default constructor of this type. So in this case, it's an int. So this starts from this word, basically the count starts from 0, and every time we see that word, we add 1. So this basically just counts, right, how many times each word appears in the corpus. And you can see that this is, this appears 3 times. I think this is like the space indicator for GPT-2. Not totally sure what the G dot is. I think Alex mentioned a little bit about that, but you can see that this occurs twice and occurs once, and so forth. So once we've computed the word frequencies, we just need to get the base vocabulary, and this is essentially the base case of this tokenizer construction. So we just loop over all the words, we get each letter in the word, and we append it to an alphabet if it's not already present in the alphabet. And so this is just all the unique characters within the corpus. And we had this like special end of text character. You can probably safely ignore this for the point of the lesson. So once we have the base character set and the word frequencies, we just split each word into the individual characters. And this is essentially the thing we're going to start training on, right? Because we're going to loop over all the character pairs, and we're going to apply the merge the most frequent ones. And so this is that data structure that it's essentially each word maps to a list of all the characters that appear in that word. Okay, so now is where the important part of the algorithm happens. So now that we have all that pre-process, we're sort of ready for training the tokenizer. And so there's a function that computes the frequency of each pair. And we will call this at each step of the training, right? So it starts off, again, with a default dictionary. It's now a default dictionary of the pair frequencies. So each time a pair occurs, it adds 1 to a counter. And we loop over each word in our words. And considering the frequency, we get the split. So we get all the characters of that word. If there's no pairs in that, then we just continue. And otherwise, we loop over each character pair, and we just count their occurrences. So we construct a tuple of the 2 characters, contiguous characters, and then we add that into the dictionary, plus equaling the frequency of that word, because that's how many of those character pairs are occurring. And we do this for each word. So right, this counts. This will return the counts of each character pair within the corpus. And so if we look at that, right, you can see, I think that this was the most, one of the more commonly occurring words. So you can see T and H appears 3 times, it looks like. H and I appears 3 times. And so you can kind of start to reason, about why these pairs might be occurring. And of course, we want to take the maximal one. So we're only printing out the first 5 here. So we just build a quick loop, and we loop over each of the pair frequencies, and we just keep track of which one is the maximum one we've seen. And at the end of it, we see that this kind of like space T occurred 7 times. So that's our first merge operation that we want to apply. And so we see that we're adding this rule to the merges dictionary and appending it to the vocabulary. So now we started with that base vocab of all the characters, and now we have our first new vocabulary element. Are there any questions at this point? Because I think this is the brunt of it.
I think we're good. Yeah, very clear.
Great. This process continues, but we need to before that process continues, we kind of argued that intuitively we could do that. We actually need to take our corpus and now apply that merge so that we don't double count those previous pairs. So we have another function for this, and this basically takes the first character of the pair and the second character of the pair, A and B, and it takes all of the characters, and so we're gonna call this on you can see we call it on G and T, which are those, again, the most frequently occurring bytes, and we loop over each word. So all those word frequencies, we're considering each one of those, we're getting the character split, and continuing if there are no pairs, and then we start looping over each character pair, and we essentially check, is the ith index equal to the first pair we're looking for, or character we're looking for, and is the second one, the neighboring one, equal to the second character, and then if so, then what we do is we take the initial segment of the word and the latter segment of the word, and then we merge together that middle segment that corresponds to the most commonly occurring byte pair. And so you can see this example where if A and B are, A and T characters, then before the split, cat might look like CAT as separate entities. And then after the split, we would do C plus this merged AT plus the empty list at this point, and this would be C and AT. So we've compressed the cat from 3 elements to 2. And, otherwise we just increment the counter of our iteration over the current word split, and you'll notice that we don't need to increment it here because we're decrementing the length of the split implicitly on this line. And finally, once we've done that, so we loop over each word, and then each character pair of each word, we check if the merge operation can be applied, we apply it, and then we finally update the splits dictionary, those characters for each word, with the updated merged text. So that was a decent amount of stuff there. So good on that, or any clarifying questions?
I think good. Yeah, keep going.
Cool. Yeah, so the first merge after we apply this, essentially if we look at this word trained with the G up front, we see it's merged, and otherwise it's the same. Each of the pairs is separate, and that's the algorithm, right? So now we have everything we need, so we can essentially loop and repeat that process for the desired vocabulary size. And so you can see if we set it to 50, we kind of go until that vocabulary size has been reached, and we compute the pair frequencies of the new splits. We compute the maximum of which pair occurred the most times, and then we just merge that, using that best pair, we merge the corpus of the character splits, and then we just collect the merges. And the reason we collect those is so we can apply those rules during the tokenization of new text. So we collect that, and we also collect the new vocabulary element, which is that concatenation of the previous 2, bytes. So you can see if you run this, we've learned 19 merge rules, evidently, and the initial vocabulary had a size of 31 to 30 characters in the alphabet plus the special token. And so we've increased that vocabulary size up to 50. So we have the 19 new rules. We can see the GT is there, is there, and you can see that if you're trying to tokenize text, then first you would apply this rule, then you would apply this rule, and so forth in sequence, and that would compress the text. And you can see the vocabulary. So it starts from those simple characters and it eventually gets more complicated. So you can see we have token I, maybe for tokenization, as a single byte within our vocabulary, or a single token, I suppose. And you can see the merge rules get progressively more complicated as well, as far as the length of the substrings that they're combining. So hopefully that all makes sense. Yeah, so for the tokenization algorithm, now that we've trained it, we first apply that pre-tokenizer. So just split text into words, then we collect each word from the pre-tokenized result. We split each word into its characters, just as before, and then we consider each merged pair that was produced from the training in the order that it was generated. So we loop over all those merges, and we essentially, again, loop over all of our character splits from each word and apply those merge rules. And then we just update the current split based off those merge rules. And so after applying all those merge rules to the entire input text that we're tokenizing, we just return that. And so if you run this on, this is not a token, I guess that's the example text, then if you call the tokenize function on that, you can see it puts that into these sets of vocabulary elements, and each one of these would get essentially a unique integer when being fed to the model. So that's BPE. It's a compression algorithm. It's quite efficient. It's somewhat interpretable, and hopefully was easy to understand. But are there any questions on that before we just talk a little bit about how it might be applied to genomics?
Yeah, I think good. Keep going.
Good.
Very excited to see how it's the next part.
Yeah, so this, maybe I'll preface. So it's mostly like a set of question and answer, just to kind of get people thinking towards this. But when we first started off, there's a huge so when you're doing protein transformers, or when you're doing say gene level or coding sequence that codes for the protein, it's actually really helpful to have what we call residue level embeddings. And this is essentially each amino acid is its own token. And that has a lot of interpretability for us as we're trying to understand the scientific capabilities of the model and understanding how we can predict certain downstream tasks from the internal hidden states of the model. So there's been some pushback for using these compression algorithms because it goes against that interpretability. And just to give you an example, you can actually fold proteins from the hidden states of the protein language models by considering the hidden states and attention maps. So that's a really desired property. Now, for genomics, it's almost, we don't know this for sure, but it's almost a necessity to apply some form of compression. So I want to build up to that. But no, this is a really open area, and it's not something that you can easily apply one of these off-the-shelf tokenizers to. So we've tried this, and it actually, the length of genome sequences sort of break the Hugging Face implementations. So we've worked, making some C versions of these that are able to handle much longer sequences and much more data than can be handled with these basic implementations. So that said, I just have a few questions. So I'm trying to kind of shield the answers. I have the answers in here, but sort of the question maybe I'll start with. Maybe I'll just give a few seconds for you to think about this before giving the answer. So what should the base vocabulary be? BP starts with the base vocab. So nucleotide sequence, say. So give you a few seconds.
ATCG.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's like a sufficient, kind of basis for constructing any DNA sequence. So, yep, it's exactly a four element base vocabulary. And if we think about, so that is indeed the answer. If we think about just training on genome sequences without doing any form of compression, then our vocabulary size is only 4. So actually to learn all the different ways, all the different sort of meanings or ways those 4 tokens can get used is actually quite a difficult learning task because there's so much diversity within the DNA sequences, and they can also be quite long. So to learn these patterns through distributional semantics presents quite a challenge. And this is, current transformer models are struggling with this. And so people have used sort of k-mer representations, say maybe we train on all the 6-mers. On the GenSlim project, we used 3-mers, and other forms of k-mers that could be appropriate. But so then the next question would be, what do the merged pairs represent? So if I construct these more complex merged sets of, nucleotides, maybe just intuitively, what do you think they might represent? And think towards that like sequence alignment idea. Yeah, so they oh, do you have
with
one?
3-mers, it's the peptides, right, and proteins, or the individual pieces.
Yeah. So that's a great example. So yeah, the 3-mers for coding sequences of DNA in particular would represent codon, and that codes directly for an amino acid. And you'd expect to see enough of those in your genome corpus where all those 3-mers are actually represented. But there's actually a lot of structure in DNA. So as you increase to like say 5-mers and 6-mers, you're not going to have uniform coverage over all the 6-mers, and it's actually kind of an enumerable. It becomes quite large set. So indeed, they represent sort of contiguous sequence motifs. So the codons are very relevant for this. But the codons, 3-mers mean different things if you have like a promoter region or if you have a regulatory region. So they might have different meanings depending on the segment. But indeed, it will learn those just through the compression. So then this other question is why is compression, I would say, particularly important for genomes? It's important in natural language as well. And a picture really demonstrates this, but does anyone have a thought why it's probably needed? Yeah, so the main thing is here that
You mean from the length perspective, or?
Yeah, it's all about length. So if we want to consider, say, like, a full chromosome or multiple chromosomes worth of nucleotide information, and we do because this is co-evolved, right? There are patterns that are important across these different, regions or segments. And if we want to consider all those, if we just look at the human genome, which is not by far not the longest genome, this is a single nucleotide resolution would be 3 billion tokens. So if you look at the attention mechanism, scales quadratically, you'd have you need a quintillion operations just to compute the self-attention for a single head, right? Quintillion comparisons, so it's in proportion to the operations. So it's really, as we scale up the sequence length in biology, we have different capabilities. You go from single gene or protein to viral genomes, which are a bit shorter. So it's like, 10 to 100 kilobase pairs. You can go up to plasmids and larger sets of genes. Bacteria, now you're getting into the mega base pair territory, and eukaryotes, which is greater than 100 mega, so it's million. And then human, you're getting up to billions. And of course, plants, the complexity is vast. And so if we want to model these hierarchical chains of information within these genomic sequences, and we want to do that in the same context, it's just, we kind of have to do something. We need to think better about how we can tokenize our data and such that those tokens encode some meaning of the underlying language we're trying to model. So questions on that?
I think you've set up the problem nicely. So now give us some answers.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, this is an open problem, right? As far as how we scale these models to the genome. There's a couple of nice works on this. I think Brian, he gave a talk. He made the EVO model, which is a state space model. Of course, we've been working on GenSlim. We targeted viral, and now we're also interested in moving towards bacteria. So expect a lot of activity here. should be an interesting next few years.
Yeah, very, very exciting. I think
but I think that's that's all I have. So I hope we're on time.
yeah, I think we're perfectly on time. Maybe any last questions, comments? All right, first, thanks a lot for pulling all the tutorials together into the GitHub. So we'll link them on the website. And I think tomorrow we'll continue after the fact that we've tokenized. Then tomorrow we're going to talk about various kinds of models. So we'll start with sequence transformer, then vision transformer, and then we're going to have some discussion on PDE architectures with neural operators and other things. So, and tomorrow we start at 9:30 a.m. Eastern again. So with that, thanks everyone for tuning in today, and then see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.